The massive alien salvage ship drifted silently through the endless darkness, closing in on what appeared to be nothing more than another lifeless piece of space debris. Its powerful sensor beams swept across the battered hull of the derelict vessel, analyzing every scar, every twisted plate of metal, every false sign of catastrophic damage. To the aliens, it looked like an abandoned human warship, another casualty of a forgotten battle, an easy prize. Inside that dead ship, 50 human crew members remained perfectly still. Not a single unnecessary sound, not a single wasted movement. Captain James Reed stood on the darkened bridge, barely breathing as he watched the alien vessel approach on the tactical display. For 3 days they had been playing dead. One mistake would end it all. "Status report," Reed whispered into his communicator. He knew the aliens couldn't hear him. The Phantom's sound-dampening hull and encrypted internal systems made sure of that. Still, years of fighting in the shadows had turned caution into instinct. "Engineering reports all systems green, sir," First Officer Tom White replied just as quietly. "The shadow drive is running perfectly silent. Their scanners are seeing exactly what we programmed them to see." A crippled warship. A faint smile crossed Reed's face. Exactly as planned. The UA's Phantom had earned its legendary reputation during the border wars. While other human warships relied on overwhelming firepower, the Phantom fought with deception. It was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a prototype stealth destroyer capable of manipulating its sensor signature and projected profile, convincing enemy scanners it was almost anything. One day, it appeared to be an ordinary cargo freighter. The next, an obsolete mining vessel. Sometimes even the wreckage of a destroyed cruiser. The enemy never realized what they were truly facing until the first shot was fired. On the main display, the alien salvage ship continued its slow approach. Mechanical arms extended from its hull. Boarding clamps unfolded into position. The scavengers believed they were about to recover abandoned technology without a fight. They had no idea they were drifting straight into a carefully prepared trap. Captain Reed's eyes never left the tactical screen. "Hold your fire," he said softly. "Let them come closer." On the bridge, every crew member waited in absolute silence. The tension was unbearable. Just a few more seconds. Then the hunters would discover they had become the prey. Their ship was huge, easily 4 times the size of the Phantom. Through the bridge windows, Reed could see their mechanical arms reaching out, ready to grab what they thought was valuable scrap metal. They had no idea they were about to wake a sleeping giant. "All hands to battle stations," Reed ordered, his voice still barely above a whisper. "But nobody moves until my mark." Throughout the ship, 50 men and women tensed at their posts, ready for action. They were all that remained of the original crew of 300, but they were the best of the best. The salvage ship's arms were just meters away now. Reed watched as the first magnetic clamp attached itself to the Phantom's outer hull. The aliens would be celebrating their find. Human warships were made of expensive materials, and their technology was highly valued on the black market. "Sir," White called from his station, "they're powering up their cutting beams. They're going to try to slice us up." Reed nodded. "Just what we were waiting for. Stand by." He watched as more clamps attached to his ship, locking the salvage vessel into position. A faint red glow appeared as the aliens powered up their cutting equipment. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about being too greedy. "Phantom crew," Reed said into the ship-wide comm. "Light her up." In an instant, the supposedly dead warship came to life. Emergency hatches slammed shut around the alien clamps, trapping them in place. The Phantom's special hull plating, which had been absorbing energy from the alien scans, now pulsed with power. Before the salvage crew could react, their own magnetic clamps turned against them, sending powerful feedback surges through their systems. "Show them our true face," Reed ordered. The shadow drive activated, and the Phantom's outer appearance shifted. Gone was the battle-scarred, dead-looking hull. In its place stood the sleek, deadly form of humanity's most feared warship. The aliens tried to back away, but it was too late. They were locked together by their own equipment. "Target their engines and weapons only," Reed commanded. "No unnecessary casualties today." The Phantom's gun ports opened, revealing rows of precision laser batteries. The weapons fired in perfect sequence, cutting through the salvage ship's defenses like they were made of paper. Within seconds, the massive alien vessel was dead in space, its engines smoking and weapon systems destroyed. "Open a channel," Reed said. When White nodded, he spoke clearly and firmly. "Alien vessel, this is Captain James Reed of the UE's Phantom. Your ship is disabled. You have 10 minutes to evacuate to your life pods. After that, we're taking everything of value from your holds. Consider this payment for trying to salvage a ship that didn't belong to you." The alien captain's response came quickly, their translator making their fear clear. "Please, we surrender. We didn't know this was the Phantom. Everyone knows the Phantom was destroyed in the Battle of Seven Suns." Reed couldn't help but smile again. The reports of our destruction were greatly exaggerated. 9 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. I suggest you start moving. The crew watched as life pods began launching from the alien ship. Each one was scanned to ensure no weapons or hidden surprises were being planned. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to trick them, and it wouldn't be the last. "Sir," White said, checking his displays, picking up multiple distress calls being sent from those pods. "They're calling for help. Military help." "Good," Reed replied, surprising his first officer. "Let them call. By the time anyone arrives, we'll be gone with the supplies we need. More importantly, the story will spread. The Phantom still hunts these spaceways, and we're still protecting human interests." As the last life pod launched, Reed's crew began their well-practiced salvage operations. They had gotten very good at quick resupply missions like this. They had to be. There weren't many friendly ports for a ship that officially didn't exist anymore. While his crew worked, Reed went to his private quarters and looked at the old star map on his wall. Somewhere out there, Earth's government was still fighting against the alien powers that had forced them into an unfair surrender. His superiors had ordered him to scuttle the Phantom and give up its secrets when the surrender was signed. Instead, he and his loyal crew had taken the ship into deep space, becoming a legend that kept Earth's enemies looking over their shoulders. Captain White's voice came over the comm. "You need to see what we found in their cargo hold. Looks like these weren't just simple salvage workers. They've got military weapons hidden under false floors. Newest stuff, too." Still in factory wrapping, Reed's expression hardened. "Document everything. Copy all their computer data. I want to know where those weapons came from and where they were going." He looked back at his star map, at the routes he marked in red, where similar salvage ships had been spotted. A pattern was forming, one that suggested the war might not be as over as everyone thought. The Phantom had started its journey as a ghost ship, playing dead to survive, but now it had become something more, a shadow that haunted the dreams of those who would threaten humanity. And if Reed was right about what these weapon shipments meant, the galaxy would soon learn why even the mightiest alien powers feared the sight of a single human warship appearing on their scopes. In the distance, tiny dots of light marked the approach of alien military vessels responding to the distress calls. But by the time they arrived, they would find only an empty salvage ship stripped of its illegal cargo, its crew safely in life pods, and another story to add to the legend of the ship that refused to die. The Phantom would vanish into the darkness of space, ready to strike again wherever and whenever humanity's enemies least expected it. The stars strayed by as the Phantom moved silently through space, its hull still warm from the recent encounter with the salvage ship. In his quarters, Captain Reed looked at the old photos on his desk while his crew sorted through their newly acquired supplies. The images showed a younger version of himself standing proud at the Phantom's first launch ceremony, back when the ship was humanity's greatest hope, rather than its last shadow of resistance. Captain White's voice came through the comm. "You might want to see this recording we found on the salvage ship's computers. It's from 3 years ago during the Battle of Three Fleets." Reed's hand tightened around his coffee mug. That battle had been the Phantom's finest hour, though few knew the true story. "Play it on my screen," he ordered. The video showed an alien war council meeting. 3 different alien commanders argued around a holographic table, their translator units converting their angry voices to human speech. "It's impossible," one shouted, bringing his fist down. "Our scouts reported 12 human warships, but the humans only had 5 ships in that sector. The Shadow Fleet is real." Another commander insisted, "My own flagship was destroyed by a human dreadnought that appeared from nowhere, but when we tracked it on sensors, it had somehow turned into a small patrol boat." Reed smiled as he watched. The truth was both simpler and more impressive than the aliens knew. There had never been a Shadow Fleet. There had only been the Phantom, using its revolutionary stealth technology to appear as different ships in different places, while other ships could only hide. The Phantom could change its entire sensor profile in seconds. He remembered that day clearly. His ship had danced between 3 separate alien fleets, appearing as a massive battleship one moment and a swift corvette the next. The aliens had shot at sensor ghosts while the Phantom struck from unexpected angles, its advanced weapons slicing through their confused formations. White appeared at his door. "Sorry to interrupt your trip down memory lane, sir, but you need to hear this." He played another recording, this one much more recent. It was hidden in a secret compartment of their computer core. The recording showed a different alien, this one wearing the elaborate uniform of a high-ranking military officer. "The human ghost ship must be found," the alien said. "The longer it remains active, the more our people question the victory we claimed. There are already whispers that if one human ship can defy us, perhaps humanity is not as weak as we told our citizens." Reed leaned forward. This was exactly the effect they'd hoped for when they decided to keep fighting. The Phantom wasn't just a warship anymore. It had become a symbol of hope for humans and a shadow of doubt for their enemies. "There's more," White said, switching to another file. "Look at the date on this one." It was from just before the war, when the Phantom was still a secret project. Reed watched as engineers swarmed over the ship's skeletal frame in the construction dock. He remembered those days well. The Phantom was supposed to be the first of 50 ships of its class, a new type of vessel that would revolutionize space warfare. "We were so close," Reed said quietly. 2 more weeks, and the second ship would have been ready. 3 more months, and we would have had 5 of them. But the aliens had attacked before the fleet was ready. In those desperate first days, Reed had been ordered to take the Phantom, the only completed ship, and run. "Save our greatest weapon," his superiors had told him. "Don't let them capture this technology." The Phantom had fled, but Reed and his crew had turned their retreat into a hunting mission. They struck at enemy supply lines, rescued human colonies before they could be attacked, and gathered intelligence that saved countless lives. Each time they appeared, stories would spread through alien communication channels about the mysterious human ships that could change their shape at will. "Sir," his tactical officer called over the comm, "we've decoded more of the salvage ship's data. You're going to want to see these shipping manifests." Reed and White headed to the bridge. The tactical display showed dozens of routes, all carrying weapons and supplies to places they shouldn't be going. "It's all happening in neutral space," White observed. "Places where military ships aren't supposed to be." "They're preparing for something," Reed said, studying the patterns. "All these shipments. They're building up forces while pretending to honor the peace treaty." He turned to his crew. "How many of you remember the Scorpion maneuver?" The bridge crew smiled. The Scorpion maneuver had been their most daring trick, used when they needed to convince the enemy they were facing an entire battle group instead of a single ship. It required perfect timing and pushed their shadow drive to its limits, but the effect was worth it. "Plot me a course that intersects these supply routes," Reed ordered. "If they're moving weapons, we're going to make them regret it. And this time, we're going to make sure everyone knows why these ships are disappearing." The crew jumped into action, their movements showing the confidence of long practice. They had started this journey with 300 crew members, the full complement for a ship of the Phantom size. Now they operated with just 50, each person doing the work of 6, but they were better at their jobs than ever. "Remember," Reed said to his crew, "we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. Every time we strike, we show the aliens that humanity isn't beaten." Every story they tell about the Shadow Fleet helps keep them cautious, makes them think twice before breaking the treaty openly. As the Phantom changed course to intercept the nearest supply route, Reed thought about all the names the aliens had given them. The Ghost Ship, the Shapeshifter, the Shadow that Strikes. Each name added to their legend, and that legend protected human worlds more effectively than a fleet of normal warships could have. Multiple contacts ahead. Tactical reported 3 ships, same class as our previous target, all showing salvage registrations, but their power readings match military craft. Reed settled into his command chair. Power up the shadow drive. Let's remind them why they fear the dark of space. He looked at the tactical display, already planning how to make 3 salvage ships see an entire human battle fleet bearing down on them. The Shadow Fleet rides again. The Phantom's hull shimmed, its outline becoming uncertain as the shadow drive spun up to full power. Soon, alien sensors would show impossible things, and more stories would spread about the human ships that could appear and disappear at will. The legend would grow, and with it, humanity's chances of surviving whatever their enemies were planning. All hands, battle stations, Reed ordered. Let's give them something new to fear. Admiral Stone slammed his fist on the holographic display, making the image of the destroyed salvage ships flicker. His large office aboard the Galactic Concordat's flagship buzzed with nervous energy as his staff officers tried to avoid his angry gaze. The latest reports confirmed his worst fear. The Phantom was active again. 3 years, he growled, his cybernetic eye glowing brighter with anger. 3 years I've hunted the ghost ship, and still it slips through our fingers. He touched the scar on his face, a permanent reminder of his last encounter with the human vessel. His mighty flagship had been reduced to scrap that day, and he barely escaped with his life. Admiral, his intelligence officer spoke up. We've analyzed the attack pattern. The salvage ships reported seeing 5 different human warships, but we know it was just the Phantom using its shadow drive technology. It's staying in this sector. The officer highlighted a region of space on the map. Stone smiled coldly. Then we'll catch it there. Order every available ship to that sector. I want 30 warships, not those disguised cargo haulers. This time we hunt it properly. Across space aboard the Phantom, Captain Reeve and his crew were making a disturbing discovery. White had finally cracked the encryption on the data they'd stolen. "Captain, look at these messages," he said, displaying them on the main screen. "They're not just shipping weapons, they're shipping components for something bigger." Red studied the supply manifests carefully. These parts, therefore, planet-killer weapons, the same type they used to force Earth's surrender. His face hardened as he remembered that dark day. The aliens had threatened to destroy Earth's colonies one by one unless humanity surrendered. What choice did they have? That's not all, White continued. The surrender treaty, it was based on lies. Look at this. He showed another document, this one showing that the aliens had only built one planet killer, not the fleet they claimed to have. They bluffed and Earth had folded. The bridge crew fell silent as they absorbed this news. Everything they had fought for, everything they'd lost. It was all based on a trick. But before they could process this revelation, the tactical officer shouted a warning. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. 35 warships. They're forming a search pattern. "Sir, it's Admiral Stone's personal fleet." Ray quickly assessed the situation. They were trapped in the sector with Stone ships blocking all the usual escape routes. The Phantom was good, but even it couldn't fight 35 warships at once. Not directly, anyway. They're broadcasting a message, communications reported. Admiral Stone's face appeared on their screen, his cybernetic eye gleaming. "Captain Reed, I know you can hear me. Your reign of terror ends today. Surrender now and I'll ensure your crew is treated fairly. Resist and I will turn this sector of space into your grave." Reed muted the transmission and turned to his crew. "Options. The asteroid field," his navigator suggested, pointing to a dense cluster of space rocks. "We could use the shadow drive there. Make them see multiple ships among the asteroids. Confuse them. They'll expect that," White argued. "Stone's hunted us too long. He knows our tricks." Reed looked at the tactical display, a plan forming in his mind. "Then we'll give him something he doesn't expect. Plot a course for the largest asteroid in that field, and get me everything we have on Stone's command ship's sensor systems. The Phantom moved slowly toward the asteroid field, making it look like they were trying to hide. Stone's fleet followed cautiously, expecting tricks. They'd fallen for the Phantom's deceptions too many times before. "Sir," Tactical reported, "they're splitting their fleet into 3 groups. They're going to try to box us in." Reed nodded. "Perfect. They think they know what we're going to do. Power up the shadow drive, but not like usual. This time, we're going to show them something new." The crew worked quickly, making adjustments to their unique stealth system. Usually they used it to make the Phantom appear as different ships. This time they had a different plan. Stone's flagship is in range. White reported their charging weapons. Now Reed ordered, "Show them their worst nightmare." The shadow drive activated, but instead of making the Phantom look like other ships, it made them disappear completely. At the same time, their sensors sent out carefully crafted false readings. To Stone's fleet, it looked like hundreds of asteroids in the field had suddenly come alive, each one appearing to be the Phantom. "They're firing!" Tactical shouted as Stone ships opened up with their main guns, blasting asteroids apart in their confusion. "Hold position," Reed commanded calmly. "Let them waste their ammunition." "White, how long until that data burst is ready?" 2 more minutes, stir. We'll be able to transmit the truth about the surrender to every ship in their fleet simultaneously." Stone ships continued their barrage, destroying asteroid after asteroid, each one potentially hiding the real Phantom. But Reed had positioned his ship in the one place they wouldn't think to look. Right above Stone's flagship, matching its speed exactly, hidden in its sensor blind spot. "Sir," communications called out, "we're picking up confused chatter from their fleet. Some of their ships are starting to question Stone's tactics. They're burning through their weapon charges for nothing." Reed watched the chaos unfold. Stone's perfectly organized fleet was falling into disarray, ships moving out of formation as they chased sensor ghosts. "Prepare to broadcast. Let's show them what they're really fighting for. The truth about the fake surrender, about the single-planet killer weapon, about all of Stone's lies. It would reach every ship in his fleet. But first, they had to survive the next few minutes. Enemy ship approaching our position," Tactical warned. "They'll spot us any second." Reed gripped his command chair. "Hold steady. White, is that transmission ready?" "Yes, sir." "Ready to broadcast on all frequencies." "Good." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Because I think it's time we remind Admiral Stone why they call us the ghost ship that haunts their nightmares." The Phantom's weapons powered up silently, still hidden in Stone's flagship's blind spot. Soon, the truth would spread through the alien fleet, and the real battle would begin. The hunt had become a trap, but not the one Admiral Stone had planned. The ghost ship was about to strike again. And this time, it carried more than just weapons. It carried the truth that could restart the war. The space around Admiral Stone's flagship lit up with weapons fire as the Phantom revealed itself. One moment, Stone's bridge crew was staring at sensor ghosts in the asteroid field. The next, alarms blared as the human warship appeared practically on top of them, its guns already firing. "Impossible!" Stone shouted as his flagship shuddered under the precise attacks. The Phantom wasn't trying to destroy his ship. Instead, it was surgically disabling their main communication arrays and weapon systems. "How long have they been there?" Before anyone could answer, every screen on every ship in his fleet began displaying the same message. The Phantom was broadcasting the secret files, showing how Stone and his allies had tricked humanity into surrender with a bluff about planet-killer weapons. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're getting questions from the other ships there. They're asking if this is true." Stone's cybernetic eye flashed red with rage. "Shut down all communications. Lock out their computer systems." But it was too late. The truth was spreading through his fleet like wildfire. Aboard the Phantom, Reed watched as confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Some ships stopped firing at the asteroids. Others turned their sensors towards Stone's flagship as if seeking confirmation or denial of the shocking revelations. "They're powering up their main guns," White warned, pointing at Stone's flagship. "They're going to try to destroy us before we can broadcast anything else." Reed had expected this. "Execute Maneuver 7. Let's show them what the shadow drive can really do." The Phantom's engines flared as it launched away from Stone's flagship. But instead of fleeing, the human ship did something no one had seen before. Its shadow drive activated at full power, and suddenly there appeared to be 5 Phantoms, each one moving in a different direction. Which one is real? Stone screamed at his sensor operators. Find the real ship. The truth was they were all real. In a way, the Phantom's shadow drive wasn't just creating fake sensor readings anymore. It was bending light and energy around the ship, creating perfect copies that could even fire weapons. Each copy only lasted a few seconds, but that was all they needed. All 5 Phantoms fired at once, their beams converging on Stone's flagship from different angles. The alien ship shields buckled under the assault. On Stone's bridge, systems began failing as the coordinated attack overwhelmed their defenses. "Sir," White called out to Reed, "3 enemy destroyers are moving to attack, but 4 others are powering down their weapons. They're refusing Stone's orders to fire." Reed nodded grimly. The truth was having its effect. Not every alien captain was willing to keep fighting once they learned they'd been tricked into an unjust war. Stone wasn't finished, though. His flagship, despite its damage, launched a spread of missiles at the Phantom. "If I can't have the ghost ship," he roared, "I'll turn it into real Ghost." "Incoming missiles," Tactical shouted. "Too many to shoot down." Reed remained calm. "Deploy the decoys. Full power to the shadow drive. Execute the Scorpion's tail." The Phantom's special technology activated again, but this time it did more than create copies. The ship seemed to split apart, its image fracturing into dozens of smaller pieces. The missiles, confused by the multiple targets, started exploding harmlessly in space. While Stone's attention was focused on the missile attack, Reed put the next phase of his plan into action. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he ordered. "Show them the rest." New information began flowing to every ship in Stone's fleet. Not just about the fake surrender, but about the secret weapon shipments they'd discovered. About how Stone and his allies were preparing for another war while pretending to honor the peace treaty. More alien ships began powering down their weapons. A few even turned their guns towards Stone's flagship, demanding answers from their admiral. "Sir," White reported with a smile, picking up transmissions from the alien ships. They're arguing about who has the right to arrest Admiral Stone." But Stone wasn't going to be arrested. His flagship's engines suddenly flared to full power as he tried to escape. "You haven't won," his voice crackled over the comm. "I still have one more secret you don't know about." Reed watched as Stone's damaged ship turned toward open space. "Target his engines," he ordered. "Don't let him escape." The Phantom's gun spoke again, but Stone's ship was built to take punishment. Despite multiple direct hits, it managed to limp away from the battle, trailing decease. "Should we pursue?" White asked. Reed studied his tactical display. Most of Stone's fleet had stood down with ships now approaching each other cautiously, trying to figure out what to do next. But a few loyal captains were moving to follow their admiral. "No," Reed decided. "Stone's finished as a military leader. Those files we broadcast have seen to that, but his last words worry me." What secret was he talking about? The answer came sooner than expected. One of Stone's officers, seeing his commander flee, decided to save himself by sharing what he knew. "Human vessel," a new voice called over the comm. "You need to know Stone's heading for the testing grounds. That's where we built it. Where we built the new planet killer." The bridge crew of the Phantom fell silent. Finally, White spoke what everyone was thinking. He's going to prove the threat was real. Even if it's too late to save his career, he's going to show everyone that he could have destroyed Earth's colonies. Reed's expression hardened. Everything the Phantom had done, every battle they'd fought, had been to protect humanity from exactly this kind of threat. They couldn't let Stone reach that weapon. "Plot and intercept course," he ordered, "and send a message to every ship that stood down. Tell them if they want to prove they're really on the side of truth. Now is their chance. Stone has to be stopped." The Phantom's engines powered up, its hull rippling as the shadow drive cooled down from its intense use. They were damaged from the battle, running on minimal crew, and about to chase a desperate man with nothing left to lose. But that had never stopped them before. "Sir," White said quietly, "if Stone's telling the truth about this weapon, We might not be able to stop it with just one ship. Reed looked at his faithful crew, the 50 people who had turned one prototype vessel into a legend that haunted the dreams of humanity's enemies. We're not just one ship, he reminded them. We're the Shadow Fleet, and it's time for one last hunt. The Phantom accelerated into space, following the trail of Stone's flagship. Behind them, several alien vessels began moving to join the pursuit. The legend of the ghost ship had changed. Now it wasn't just a story to frighten alien commanders. It was a symbol of truth that could unite even former enemies against a greater threat. They had one last battle ahead of them, one last chance to prove that a single ship with the right crew and the right cause could change the course of history. The hunt was on, and this time, the ghost ship wasn't hunting from the shadows. This time, it was leading the charge into the light. The Phantom raced through space, following the trail of Admiral Stone's damaged flagship. Behind them, 5 alien ships that had once been their enemies now followed in formation, their crews having chosen truth over blind loyalty. Ahead lay the testing grounds where Stone's secret weapon waited. "Status report," Reed commanded, studying the tactical display that showed Stone's ship getting closer to their destination. "Shadow drive is at 60% power," White reported. "Main guns are fully charged, but our rear shields are still weak from the battle. The alien ships are keeping pace with us, but they're nervous. Their sensors are picking up something big ahead." They all saw it moment later. A massive space station appeared on their screens. Its central section shaped like a massive gun barrel pointed at the stars. Around it floated construction pods and defense platforms bristling with weapons. "That's it," the tactical officer announced. "That's the planet killer. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen." Stone's voice crackled over their comm system filled with manic triumph. "Do you see it now, Captain Reed? This is what real power looks like. One shot from this weapon can crack a planet in half. Think about that. All your tricks, all your clever tactics mean nothing against this." Reed watched as Stone's flagship docked with the station. Around the Phantom, their alien allies slowed their ships, clearly frightened by what they were seeing. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a nightmare made real. "Sir," White said quietly, "if he brings that weapon online, he won't," Reed stated firmly. He opened a channel to their alien allies. "This is why we kept fighting after the surrender. This is why the Phantom never gave up. Are you with us?" There was a moment of silence. Then the alien ships responded one by one, pledging their support. They had seen the truth about Stone's lies, and they couldn't let this weapon be used. "Good," Reed said. "Because I have a plan, but it's going to take all of us working together." He turned to his crew. "Power up the shadow drive. Full power. Everything we have left. We're going to show them the true meaning of a ghost ship." The station's defenses came alive as they approached, filling space with energy beams and missiles. The alien ships moved into attack formation, drawing fire while the Phantom enacted Reed's plan. "Shadow drive at maximum power," engineering reported. "We can't maintain this for long." "We won't need long," Reed assured them. The Phantom's special technology activated, but this time it did something new. Instead of creating multiple images of their ship, it bent light and energy around them in a way they'd never tried before. To everyone watching, it looked like the Phantom had vanished completely, not just from sensors, but from sight itself. They had become a true ghost ship. By the stars, one of their alien allies gasped over the calm. "Where did they go?" Stone's voice betrayed his first hint of fear. "Find them. They have to be out there somewhere. Power up the main weapon. I'll destroy the nearest human colony to show them what happens to those who defy us." But the Phantom was already moving, invisible to every scan and sensor. They slipped through the station's defensive screen, past the weapons that fired blindly into space. Reed had guessed right. The station's sensors couldn't track what they couldn't see. "Engineering reports the shadow drive is overheating," White warned. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before it fails." "That's all we need," Reed said. "Get our allies clear. Tell them to be ready." The Phantom glided closer to the station, its invisible form passing right next to Stone's docked flagship. On the station's bridge, Stone was shouting orders, trying to bring the planet killer online before his enemies could stop him. "Target locked," Tactical reported. "We're in position." Reed took a deep breath. Everything they'd fought for came down to this moment. "Drop the cloak, show them where we are, and fire everything we have." The Phantom suddenly appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter, so close that its hull nearly touched the massive weapon. Its guns opened up at point-blank range, targeting specific weak points they'd identified in the station's design. Stone screamed in rage as he realized what was happening. The Phantom wasn't just attacking, it was breaking the station apart with surgical precision, hitting power conduits and structural supports that their scans had revealed. "The planet killer is powering up," White shouted. "They're going to try to fire it." "No, they're not," Reed said calmly. "Because we're not alone." The alien ships that had joined them suddenly opened fire from multiple directions, their weapons striking the exact points the Phantom had weakened. They had coordinated this attack during their pursuit, each ship knowing its role. The station's superstructure began to break apart. The planet killer weapon, not yet fully powered, exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations. Stone's flagship, still docked to the dying station, was caught in the destruction. "All ships clear the blast radius," Reed ordered. The Phantom's engines flared as they pulled away from the exploding station. Behind them, Stone's voice cut off mid-scream as his flagship was consumed by the very weapon he had built to threaten others. The shadow drive finally failed as they reached safe distance, but they didn't need it anymore. Everyone watched as the massive station tore itself apart, its pieces scattering into space. The threat it represented died with its creator. Captain Communications called out. "We're getting messages from everywhere. The alien ships that stood down earlier, they're broadcasting what happened. The story is spreading through every fleet, every world." Reed nodded. "Let them tell it. Let everyone know that the ghost ship didn't just haunt their nightmares. It brought them the truth. And let them know that when it mattered most, their own people chose to help us destroy a weapon that never should have existed." The alien ships formed up around the Phantom, no longer as enemies or even reluctant allies, but as partners who had chosen to do what was right. Their crews transmitted messages of respect and friendship to the human vessel that had become legend. "Sir," White said with a smile, "they're asking what we should do next. They say their governments will have questions about all this. Then we'll answer them," Reed replied. "Together. The war started with lies and fear. Let it end with truth and cooperation." He looked at his crew, the 50 people who had helped turn one ship into a symbol of hope. The Phantom was built to hide in shadows, but sometimes the greatest victories come from stepping into the light. The ships turned together and headed for Earth. The Phantom had started its journey as a ghost story told to frighten alien commanders. It had become something more, a legend that proved one ship with the right crew and the right cause could change the course of history. They would face challenges ahead, there would be questions to answer, treaties to negotiate, and trust to rebuild. But they had shown that even the mightiest powers could be brought down by the truth, and that former enemies could become allies when they chose to stand together against a real threat. The Shadow Fleet, which had never been more than one ship and its brave crew, had completed its final mission. But its legend would live on, not as a tale of fear, but as a story of hope. Proof that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield, but the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter the odds. The massive warship Steadfast drifted silently through the darkness of space. It all scared and blackened. Pieces of metal and debris floated around it like a cloud of dead butterflies. To any watching eyes, the ship looked like just another casualty of the ongoing war between humans and the Coalition. Inside the bridge, Captain James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the main view screen with steady eyes. The bridge was dark, lit only by the dim glow of essential systems running on minimal power. The air was cold. They'd shut down all non-critical systems to maintain their cover. "Status report," Walker whispered. Though there was no real need for silence in space, old habits died hard. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied Tom from his engineering station. His fingers danced across the darkened console, making microscopic adjustments to keep their power signature as low as possible. The fake hull damage is holding up perfectly. Anyone scanning us will see exactly what we want them to see. Walker nodded slowly. The damage to their ship had taken weeks to prepare. Every blast mark, every torn piece of hull plating had been carefully designed to look real while protecting the vital systems underneath. It was an elaborate trap, and everything had to be perfect. "Movement detected, sir," called out Lisa from the sensor station. Her voice was tight with anticipation. 3 Coalition battlecruisers just dropped out of hyperspace. They're at the edge of the sector, about 30 minutes out at their current speed. Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Right on schedule. Status of our reactor: cold but ready," Tom responded. "We can go from 0 to full power in 15 seconds. The bridge crew worked in near silence. As the minutes ticked by, they trained for this mission for months. Every person knew their role, knew exactly what to do when the time came. The plan was simple but dangerous. Appear helpless, draw in the enemy, then strike when they least expected it. The Coalition ships grew larger on their screen. They were impressive vessels, each one nearly twice the size of the Steadfast. Their hulls gleamed with polished metal, decorated with the red and gold markings of the Coalition fleet. They moved with the confidence of predators who'd spotted easy prey. "They're scanning us," Lisa reported, reading standard salvage protocols. "They think we're dead in the water." Walker watched as the enemy ships spread out in a standard salvage formation. It was exactly what they'd hoped for, the Coalition's arrogance working against them. They never expected a human vessel to be a threat, especially not one that appeared so badly damaged. "Incoming transmission," said Mike from communications. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Let's hear it," Walker ordered. A deep, authoritative voice filled the bridge. "Attention, disabled vessel. This is General Reed of the Coalition fleet. Your ship is now under our control. Do not attempt any hostile actions. We will begin boarding procedures shortly." Walker didn't respond. The silence would make them think the Steadfast's communications were damaged. He watched as small dots began to appear on the tactical display. Boarding shuttles launching from the Coalition ships. Multiple boarding craft detected. Lisa confirmed. "They'll be in weapons range in 5 minutes." The tension on the bridge rose with each passing second. Walker could feel his crew's anticipation, their eagerness to spring the trap. But timing was crucial. They had to wait until the Coalition ships were fully committed. "Sir," Tom whispered urgently, "one of the false hull plates is shifting. If it moves too much, they might detect our active systems underneath." Walker frowned. This was the risk with their plan. One small detail could give everything away. "Can you stabilize it?" "Working on it," Tom replied, his fingers flying over his console, rerouting minimal power to the magnetic clamps. "There, that should hold it." The boarding shuttles grew closer. On the main screen, Walker could now make out their details. Sleek, predatory craft designed to cut through a ship's hull and deposit troops. The Coalition believed in overwhelming force, using superior numbers to crush any resistance. "Enemy vessels holding position," Lisa reported. "They're in perfect formation for salvage operations." She paused, checking another reading. "Sir, they've lowered their shields. They're not expecting any resistance." Walker allowed himself another small smile. Everything was falling into place. The Coalition's biggest weakness was their pride, their absolute certainty that humans were inferior. That pride was about to cost them dearly. "All hands," Walker said quietly into the ship's internal comm system. "Final positions. Prepare for Operation Phoenix." Throughout the massive ship, hundreds of crew members tensed in readiness. In the engine room, engineers stood ready at their stations, prepared to bring the reactor to full power. In the weapon bays, gunners sat at their posts, weapons pre-targeted on the Coalition vessels. Every system, every weapon, every person was ready. The boarding shuttles were now less than a minute away. Walker could imagine the Coalition troops inside, probably joking among themselves about how easy this mission would be. They'd be expecting to find a dead ship, maybe a few survivors to take prisoner. Instead, they were flying straight into the jaws of a trap. 30 seconds to optimal range, Lisa announced. Walker straightened his uniform, a gesture that his crew recognized. They all tensed, ready for his command. 20 seconds. The Coalition ships loomed large on their screens now. Their weapons dormant, their shields down, their boarding shuttles exposed. They'd positioned themselves perfectly, exactly where the Steadfast's weapons would do the most damage. 10 seconds. Walker took a deep breath. Months of preparation had led to this moment. One way or another, they were about to change the course of the war. 5 seconds. The boarding shuttles were almost touching the Steadfast hull now. In moments, they would attach their cutting tools and begin burning their way inside. Mark Walker's voice rang out clear and firm. Execute Operation Phoenix. The bridge erupted into activity. The main lights blazed to life as the reactor surged from dormant to full power in seconds. Throughout the ship, the false hull plates fell away, revealing pristine armor and fully operational weapon systems underneath. The Steadfast transformed from a dead hulk into a fully armed warship in the blink of an eye. On the Coalition ships, alarms would be blaring, but it was already too late. The Steadfast's weapons were powered up and locked on target. The trap was sprung, and the real battle was about to begin. Walker allowed himself one final moment of satisfaction before giving the order that would change everything. All batteries fire at will. The Steadfast's weapons blazed to life, streaks of brilliant energy bursting from its hull. The Coalition boarding shuttles never stood a chance. Half of them vanished in balls of fire, while the others scattered like startled birds, desperately trying to return to their mother ships. On the bridge of the lead Coalition ship, General Reed stared in disbelief at his tactical display. The supposedly dead human vessel had transformed into a fully armed warship in seconds. His perfectly planned salvage operation was turning into a nightmare. "Shields up! Battle stations!" Reed roared. But he knew they were already too late. His ships were in the worst possible position, arranged in a salvage formation that left them exposed to enemy fire. They'd walked right into the humans' trap. Back on the Steadfast, Captain Walker was calling out orders in rapid succession. Target their engines first. Don't let them reposition. Tom, give me everything you can from the reactor. Lisa, keep those jamming fields up. I don't want them calling for help. The space around them lit up with weapons fire. The Steadfast's main guns pounded the nearest Coalition ship, its shots finding weak points in the enemy's hastily raised shields. The Coalition vessel shuddered under the impact, pieces of its armor plating torn away by the force of the blasts. "Sir," Lisa called out from her station, "they're trying to coordinate their defense, but our jamming is keeping them from synchronizing their shield frequencies." Walker nodded grimly. This was another part of their plan. The Coalition ships relied heavily on working together, combining their shields and coordinating their fire. By disrupting their communications, the Steadfast was forcing each ship to fight along. The bridge rocked as return fire finally started coming in. The Coalition ships were recovering from their surprise, bringing their powerful weapons to bear, but they were still out of position, their shots not nearly as effective as they could have been. "Shields holding at 85%, Tom reported. "Those hits aren't as strong as they should be. They still haven't got their weapons fully powered up." Walker watched as another salvo from the Steadfast struck home. The Coalition ship to their right was in serious trouble, its engine section sparking and venting atmosphere. But the other two vessels were starting to maneuver, trying to get into better firing positions. "Sir, detecting power surge from the lead ship," Lisa warned. "They're charging their main weapon array. Roll ship, present our reinforced ventral armor," Walker commanded. The Steadfast turned gracefully in space, just as a massive beam of energy shot from the Coalition flagship. The blast struck their armored underside, the impact making the whole ship vibrate. "Damage report. Shields down to 60% on the ventral side, but armor held," Tom called back. "That was their best punch, Captain. They won't be able to fire that weapon again for at least 3 minutes. Walker allowed himself a tight smile. "Then let's make those 3 minutes count. All batteries, concentrate fire on the damaged ship. Let's take one of them out of the fight." The Steadfast's gun spoke again, this time focusing all their fire on the wounded Coalition vessel. Its shields, already weakened, couldn't withstand the barrage. Explosions bloomed across its hull as vital systems were hit. On the Coalition flagship's bridge, General Reed was furious. "How?" he demanded. "How did they hide all this? Our scans showed nothing." His tactical officer, looking shaken, tried to explain. "Sir, they must have developed some new kind of stealth technology. The damage we saw, it was all fake, carefully designed to hide their real capabilities." Reed slammed his fist on his command chair. The humans had outplayed him completely. His arrogance, his certainty that no human ship could threaten his force, had led them right into this trap. And now one of his ships was about to be destroyed. The damaged Coalition vessel's engines finally gave out. It started drifting, emergency pods launching from its sides as the crew abandoned ship. The other two Coalition ships tried to move to protect their stricken companion, but the steadfast superior position made it impossible. "Enemy vessel is disabled," Lisa reported with satisfaction, reading multiple hull breaches and critical system failures. "She's out of the fight, sir." Walker nodded. "Good. Now for the others, Tom. How's our power holding up? Reactors running hot but stable." "Sir, we can keep this up." The battle continued to rage. The remaining Coalition ships were fighting harder now, their initial shock replaced by desperate determination. Energy beams and projectiles crisscrossed the space between the vessels, some finding their marks, others disappearing into the void. The Steadfast took another hard hit, this one catching them on the port side. Warning alarms blared as damage reports came in. "Port shield generator is struggling," Tom announced. "We've got damage control teams responding, but we need to protect that side." Walker studied the tactical display. The Coalition ships were trying to flank them to get to their weakened port side, but that movement was also an opportunity. "Lisa, do we still have the port missile tubes?" "Yes, sir. They're operational. Load them with our special packages. Let's give our friends another surprise." The Coalition ships pressed their attack, thinking they'd finally found a weakness to exploit. They didn't notice the missile tubes opening on the Steadfast's port side until it was too late. The missiles that launched weren't ordinary weapons. As they approached the Coalition ships, they suddenly split apart, each one releasing dozens of smaller projectiles. These weren't designed to explode. They were electronic warfare devices, tiny but powerful jammers that attached themselves to the enemy ship's hulls. The effect was immediate. The Coalition vessel's shields began to flicker and fail as the devices interfered with their power distribution systems. Their coordinated attack fell apart as their systems were disrupted one by one. "Direct hits," Lisa called out. "Their shield strength is dropping across the board. Their weapons are losing power." Walker straightened in his chair. This was the moment they'd planned for, the reason they'd let themselves take damage to the port side. "All batteries, fire at will. Let's end this." The Steadfast's guns opened up with everything they had. Without their shields, the Coalition ships were vulnerable. Armor plating melted under the barrage, weapons were knocked offline, and engines sputtered and died. On his flagship's bridge, General Reed watched in horror as his mighty force was systematically taken apart by a single human vessel. His tactical officer was shouting something about unprecedented weapon types, about tricks and traps they'd never seen before. But Reed wasn't listening. He was thinking about how badly he'd underestimated these humans, and how that mistake was about to cost him everything. The battle was reaching its end. The Coalition ships, their weapons nearly useless and their shields gone, could no longer effectively fight back. The steadfast, superior position and carefully planned strategy had won the day. Walker looked at the destruction around them with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. It had been a costly victory. Their ship had taken damage, and people had died on both sides. But they'd proven something important today, that humans couldn't be underestimated, that superior numbers and technology weren't everything. "Sir," Mike called from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from the Coalition flagship. They're surrendering." Walker nodded slowly. "Accept their surrender. Prepare boarding parties." He paused, looking at his crew. "Well done, everyone. Operation Phoenix is a success." The bridge crew cheered, but Walker kept his eyes on the view screen, watching the Coalition ships power down the remaining systems. This victory would change the war. He knew after today, no one would ever look at a damaged human ship and assume it was helpless. After today, everything would be different. The boarding parties from the Steadfast moved carefully through the Coalition flagship's corridors. Their boots clanked against the metal floor as they advanced, weapons ready. Even though the ship had surrendered, no one was taking any chances. Leading the main boarding team was Commander Bill Roberts, the steadfast security chief. "Keep your eyes open," Bill told his team through the radio. Just because they surrendered doesn't mean everyone got the message. The coalition ship's interior was a mess. The battle had knocked out many systems, and emergency lights cast red shadows everywhere. Damaged circuits sparked in the walls, and the air smelled of burned metal. Every few minutes, the ship would groan and shake as its damaged structure settled. They encountered small groups of coalition crew members along the way, all of them sitting with their hands up, following surrender protocols. Bill's team quickly secured each group, treating them firmly but fairly. They weren't here for revenge. They were professionals doing their job. Back on the Steadfast Bridge, Captain Walker was coordinating the entire operation. The view screen showed multiple camera feeds from the boarding teams, along with status updates from around both ships. "Sir," Lisa called from her station, "we're picking up some unusual readings from the coalition ship's engine room. Could be a self-destruct sequence." Walker's expression hardened. "Get me Commander Roberts immediately." Bill's voice came through quickly. "Roberts here, sir. Bill, you need to get to their engine room now. We're reading possible self-destruct preparations. Copy that. Team 2 with me." Bill's team double-timed it through the corridors, following the ship's markings toward engineering. They encountered more resistance here. A group of coalition engineers who hadn't accepted the surrender. A brief firefight broke out, but the human team's superior training showed. They quickly subdued the engineers without any casualties. In the engine room, they found what they were looking for. 3 coalition officers were working frantically at a control panel, trying to override their own safety systems. Bill's team burst in, weapons raised. "Step away from the controls," Bill ordered. "Hands where we can see them." 2 of the officers complied immediately, but the third kept working, his fingers flying over the controls. Bill didn't hesitate. He fired a stun round that dropped the officer before he could finish whatever he was doing. "Engine room secured," Bill reported. "We've got some would-be heroes down here, but the situation is under control." On the bridge of his captured flagship, General Reed sat under guard, watching as human crews efficiently took control of his vessel. His pride was as damaged as his ship, but he was also curious. He'd never seen anything like the tactics the humans had used today. Captain Walker entered the bridge, his uniform neat, despite the recent battle. He walked straight to Reed, studying the coalition general with interest. "Your reputation for tactical brilliance is well earned," Reed admitted grudgingly. "I didn't think humans were capable of such deception." Walker smiled slightly. "That's exactly what we counted on, General. Your belief in our inferiority was your weakness. We just had to play to your expectations." Reed nodded slowly. "The damage to your ship, it was all fake. A trap. Months of preparation," Walker confirmed. "Every blast mark, every piece of debris, carefully designed to hide our real capabilities. We studied your salvage protocols, learned exactly how you'd approach a disabled vessel. Then we just had to wait for the right target." The general's expression showed a mix of anger and respect. "And those devices you used, the ones that disabled our shields, we've never seen anything like them. Human ingenuity, General. We can't always match your technology, so we find ways around it." Speaking of which, Walker turned to one of his officers. "How's the data retrieval coming?" "Very well, sir," the officer replied. "Their computers are providing a wealth of information. Battle plans, fleet movements, technical specifications. It's all there." Reed's face fell as he realized the full extent of the disaster. Not only had he lost 3 ships to a single human vessel, but now the humans would have access to coalition military secrets. This defeat would have consequences far beyond this single battle. Meanwhile, in the Steadfast's medical bay, doctors treated wounded from both sides. The human medics worked just as hard to save coalition lives as they did their own crew members. Several coalition soldiers watched in surprise as their injured comrades received the same level of care as the humans. One coalition officer, being treated for a burned arm, spoke quietly to his human doctor. "We were told humans were savages," he said, "that you didn't value life like we did. But I'm seeing something very different." The doctor smiled as she wrapped his arm. "There's a lot about humans you've been told that isn't true. Maybe it's time your people learned who we really are." Back on the bridge, Walker was receiving updates from throughout both ships. The situation was under control, but there was still a lot of work to be done. The disabled Coalition vessel needed to be salvaged. Prisoners had to be processed, and their own damage needed repairs. "Sir," Lisa called out, "long-range sensors are picking up more Coalition ships. Looks like a response to the distress call that got out before we jammed communications." Walker nodded. They'd expected this time to arrival, at least 6 hours at their current speed. More than enough time. Start downloading everything we can from their computers. "Tom, how are the repairs coming? We can be back at full fighting strength in 4 hours, Captain." The damage wasn't as bad as it looked. Walker turned to General Reed. "Your reinforcements will find empty space, General. We'll be long gone along with all your ship's data and some very interesting Coalition technology samples." Reed looked at him sharply. "You're not going to destroy my ships." "No need," Walker replied. "By the time your forces arrive, we'll have stripped them of anything useful. The empty hulks we leave behind will be a message, a reminder that underestimating humans is a costly mistake." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. The steadfast crews worked efficiently, downloading data, collecting technology samples, and making repairs. They also helped stabilize the Coalition ships, ensuring no lives would be lost after they departed. As the deadline approached, Walker made one final tour of his ship, checking on his crew and the prisoners. He found them talking to each other, sharing stories and experiences. Despite being enemies, they were starting to see each other as people, rather than just opponents. "It's time," Walker announced when he returned to the bridge. "Begin withdrawal procedures. Let's get our prize home." The Steadfast's engines powered up, their steady hum filling the ship. As they pulled away from the Coalition vessels, Walker looked at the battlefield one last time. It had been a victory beyond their wildest expectations, not just in terms of military success, but in changing perceptions on both sides. "Send a message to command," he told Mike. "Operation Phoenix successful. Tell them everything is about to change." The Steadfast jumped into hyperspace, leaving behind 3 damaged Coalition ships and countless shattered assumptions about human capabilities. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The Steadfast emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human-controlled space. 3 patrol ships immediately moved to intercept them, but backed off when they received the victory codes. Captain Walker watched as the patrol vessels formed an honor escort around his ship. Word of their success had traveled fast. In the ship's main holding area, General Reed sat with his senior officers, all under guard, but treated with respect. They were watching a news broadcast that one of the guards had allowed them to see. The Coalition leadership was in chaos, trying to explain how 3 of their best ships had been captured by a single human vessel. "They're already calling it the Phoenix Gambit," one of Reed's officers said quietly. "Our entire military doctrine is being questioned. Everything we thought we knew about human capabilities was wrong." Reed nodded slowly. "We became too confident, too set in our ways. We stopped innovating because we thought we were superior. The humans never stopped thinking, never stopped finding new ways to fight." The guard watching them was surprised by their conversation. He'd expected anger or resentment, not this kind of analytical acceptance of defeat. Maybe the Coalition forces weren't as arrogant as they'd been led to believe. On the bridge, Walker was in a secure communication with Fleet Command. The faces of 5 admirals looked back at him from the screen, their expressions a mix of satisfaction and concern. "The data you recovered is invaluable." Admiral Stone was saying their fleet movements, their technology specs. This could change the entire course of the war. "But there's something else, something we need you to know." Walker leaned forward. "What is it, sir?" "Your victory has had an unexpected effect. We're receiving communications from multiple Coalition worlds. It seems your treatment of the prisoners, combined with the shocking defeat of their best ships, has caused some serious political upheaval. There are calls for peace talks." Walker absorbed this news with surprise. They'd hoped to prove humans couldn't be easily defeated, but triggering peace talks, that was beyond their wildest expectations. "There's more," another admiral added. "Some of the Coalition's client races are reconsidering their allegiance. They've seen that the coalition isn't invincible. Some are already reaching out to us about possible alliances. In the ship's engineering section, Tom was working with a team of technicians to analyze the coalition technology they captured. Some of it was more advanced than human tech, but not in the ways they'd expected. "Look at this," he said to his team, pointing at a power coupling. "They focused so much on raw power that they forgot about efficiency. We could help them improve this by at least 30% just by redesigning the flow regulators." One of his engineers looked up in surprise. "Help them? They're the enemy." Tom shook his head. "Maybe not for much longer. And if we're going to have peace someday, we need to understand each other, both our strengths and our weaknesses." Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out. Human crew members and coalition prisoners were talking, sharing stories, finding out that they had more in common than they'd thought. The artificial barriers of propaganda and prejudice were starting to break down. In the medical bay, the coalition wounded were recovering well thanks to the combination of human and coalition medical techniques. The human doctors had learned some valuable lessons from coalition medical technology, while the coalition medics were impressed by human surgical innovations. "Your people adapt so quickly." A coalition medical officer said to the human chief surgeon, "We spend years perfecting a single technique, but you're always trying new approaches, combining different methods." The surgeon smiled. "That's because we had to. We couldn't match your technology, so we had to get creative. Sometimes having less makes you learn more." Walker was in his ready room reviewing the after-action reports when Lisa buzzed him. "Sir, you need to see this. We're picking up massive fleet movements from Coalition space." He rushed to the bridge where the tactical display showed dozens of Coalition fleet elements on the move. But they weren't advancing. They were pulling back, consolidating their forces. "They're scared," Lisa said wonderingly. "They don't know if there are more ships like us out there, more traps waiting to be sprung. They're actually retreating from contested systems." Walker studied the display thoughtfully. "They're not just retreating, they're creating space for negotiations. They want to talk, but they need to save face. This way, they can claim they're repositioning their forces, not running away." In the ship's mess hall, human crew members had invited some of the coalition prisoners to share a meal. It was against regulations, but Walker had approved it. He understood the importance of these small gestures. "Your food is interesting," a coalition officer said, trying what the humans call pizza. "We never mix flavors like this. Everything in our culture is meant to be pure, separate. Maybe that's the real difference between us," a human crew member replied. "We believe that mixing things up, trying new combinations makes everything better, even if it gets messy sometimes." The next few days were filled with debriefings, data analysis, and preparations for their arrival at Earth. The coalition prisoners would be transferred to a secure facility, but already there was talk of them serving as cultural advisors for the peace negotiations. Walker spent time with General Reed, learning about coalition culture and sharing insights about humanity. They were building a foundation of understanding that could prove crucial in the days ahead. "Your trap was brilliant," Reed admitted during one of their talks. "But it was more than just the tactical victory. You showed us something we didn't expect: humanity. Your people treated mine with respect, even after defeating us. That's not how our propaganda said you would behave." Walker nodded. "Maybe that's the biggest trap we sprung, showing you who we really are, not who you thought we were." As they approached Earth, Walker gathered his crew for one final address. They stood in the ship's largest cargo bay, humans and coalition prisoners alike, all listening. "What we achieved goes beyond military victory," he told them. "We proved that courage, creativity, and compassion are more powerful than any weapon. We showed that enemies can become friends, that understanding is better than fear. Whatever happens next, remember this: change starts with people willing to think differently, to take chances, to see beyond old prejudices." The crew applauded, and to everyone's surprise, so did many of the coalition prisoners. Something had changed in these few days, a glimpse of what might be possible if both sides could move past their fears and assumptions. As Earth grew larger in their view screens, Walker thought about everything that had led to this moment. The months of planning, the risks they'd taken, the lives affected by their actions. They'd set out to prove humans couldn't be underestimated, but they'd accomplished something far more important. They'd opened the door to peace, shown that different species could learn from each other, work together, find common ground. The real victory wasn't in the battle they'd won, but in the future they'd made possible. 6 months had passed since the Steadfast's historic victory. The Great Hall of the Earth Defense Command was filled with representatives from both human and coalition worlds. Captain Walker stood at attention in his dress uniform, watching as human and coalition leaders signed the preliminary peace accords. The journey to this moment had been challenging. After the Steadfast returned to Earth, both sides had to overcome decades of mistrust and propaganda. But the seeds planted during those few days after the battle had grown into something remarkable. General Reed, no longer a prisoner, but now serving as the coalition's chief diplomatic advisor, stood nearby. He caught Walker's eye and gave a slight nod. They'd come a long way from that day when Reed had thought he was capturing a helpless vessel. The signing ceremony ended with applause from both sides. As the crowd began to mingle, Walker found himself surrounded by his old crew members, all specially invited for this historic occasion. "Hard to believe it all started with us playing dead in space," Tom said, grinning. He'd been promoted to chief engineer of the entire Earth Defense Fleet. His innovations with coalition technology leading to remarkable improvements in human ships. Lisa, now heading the new Joint Species Technical Exchange Program, nodded in agreement. The best trap we set wasn't the fake damage or the hidden weapons. It was making them see us as people, not just enemies. The success of the Phoenix Gambit, as it had come to be known, had changed military doctrine throughout known space. No one took anything at face value anymore. But more importantly, it had taught both sides the value of looking beneath the surface, of questioning their assumptions about each other. Walker watched as human and coalition children played together in one corner of the hall, part of a new cultural exchange program. They didn't see aliens or enemies, they just saw new friends to play with. It was a powerful symbol of what the future could hold. "Captain Walker," a voice called. He turned to find Admiral Stone approaching with several coalition officials. "These gentlemen would like to discuss your new assignment." Walker raised an eyebrow. This was the first he'd heard of any new assignment. The Admiral smiled. "We're forming a joint task force," one of the coalition officials explained. "A combined fleet of human and coalition ships working together to explore deep space. After seeing how your crew handled first contact situations and cultural exchanges, we believe you're the perfect choice to lead it." The implications were enormous. A joint fleet sharing technology and expertise, learning from each other's strengths. It was more than just a military operation. It was a statement about the future both sides wanted to build. In another part of the hall, the Steadfast's medical team was deep in discussion with coalition medical officers. The exchange of medical knowledge had already saved thousands of lives on both sides. What had started as battlefield medicine had grown into a comprehensive program of shared research and development. "Remember how surprised they were when we first treated their wounded?" the chief surgeon asked, smiling at the memory. "Now we're planning joint hospitals on 3 different worlds." The changes weren't limited to military and medical cooperation. Trade routes were opening up between human and coalition worlds. Cultural exchanges were becoming common. People on both sides were learning each other's languages, customs, and ways of thinking. Bill, the Steadfast's former security chief, was now training the first mixed human coalition security teams. "It's amazing," he told Walker. "They're learning our adaptability, and we're learning their discipline. Together, we're better than either of us were alone." As the evening wore on, Walker found himself on a balcony overlooking the city. General Reed joined him there, both of them contemplating the lights below. "You know what the history books will say?" Reed asked. "They'll say the war ended because of a clever military trap, but we know it was more than that." Walker nodded. "It was about seeing past our fears and prejudices, about realizing that different doesn't mean inferior or superior. It just means different. My people are learning that lesson," Reed said, slowly. "But they're learning. Your victory showed us that there's strength in flexibility, in being willing to change and adapt. We become too rigid, too sure of ourselves." Inside the hall, a group of scientists was presenting the latest results of joint human coalition research projects. The combination of coalition precision and human creativity was leading to breakthroughs neither side could have achieved alone. "Look at that," Tom said, pointing to a display showing a new type of engine. Coalition power systems combined with human control interfaces. 5 years ago, we were trying to blow each other up. Now we're building the future together. The new engine was just one example. Everywhere you looked, the cooperation between humans and coalition was producing remarkable results. Agriculture, medicine, space exploration, environmental protection. Every field was advancing faster than ever before. Walker's old crew had scattered to different assignments now, each playing their part in building this new future. But they still got together regularly to remember that mission, to talk about how a single battle had changed everything. "You know what I think the real turning point was?" Lisa said during one of these gatherings. "It wasn't when we sprung the trap. It wasn't even when we won the battle. It was afterward, when both sides realized we had more to gain by working together than by fighting each other." As the peace ceremony drew to a close, Walker prepared to address the gathered dignitaries. He looked out at the mixed audience, humans and coalition members sitting together, talking, laughing, sharing ideas. It was everything they'd hoped for and more. "6 months ago," he began, "we proved that appearances can be deceiving. A seemingly disabled ship turned out to be a powerful weapon. But we learned something far more important. We learned that old enemies can become new allies, that different ways of thinking can complement each other, that the future belongs to those who are willing to look past their prejudices and see new possibilities." He paused, looking at his old crew members, at General Reed, at all the people who had helped make this moment possible. The Phoenix Gambit wasn't just about military deception, it was about revealing truth, the truth that we're all capable of change, of growth, of seeing beyond our assumptions. Today, as we sign these accords, we're not just ending a war, we're beginning a journey together, one that will take us further than either of us could go alone. The applause that followed came from humans and coalition members alike. As Walker looked out at the crowd, he remembered that moment 6 months ago when his ship had appeared dead in space, waiting to spring its trap. They'd achieved their military objective that day, but they'd also started something much bigger. The war was over, the future was beginning, and it looked brighter than anyone could have imagined.